session from across the globe. And a sincere thanks to the press reporters and media personnel, to all the supporters and organizers of this thought-provoking lecture that encourages us to think global and act local. We are glad to see that there are some eminent personalities and dignitaries who have joined us at this venue amongst the audience, who have taken time out from their busy schedules to attend this lecture. A warm welcome to Professor Shankar Chatterjee, NIRD, Mr. B.V. Subbarao, and Sri Paparao. Then we are also delighted to have sarpanchas from few gram panchayats who are attending this session, and this particular lecture is of very much importance to them. So I heartily welcome them. ప్రజాస్వామ్యంలో వికేంద్రీకరణ అనే అంశంపై పలు విషయాలు పెద్దల దగ్గర తెలుసుకోవడానికి వచ్చిన పలు గ్రామాల సర్పంచులకు వారి అనుచరులకు హృదయపూర్వకంగా అభినందిస్తున్నాం. మిమ్మల్ని ఈ కార్యక్రమానికి స్వాగతిస్తున్నాం. సో this lecture session on democracy and decentralization is being organized by S.Jaipal Reddy Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know S.Jaipal Reddy was a charismatic and dynamic personality. He was widely regarded as a political stalwart for his democratic principles and secular outlook. In his political career spanning 50 years, he was elected 5 times to the Lok Sabha, served 4 terms as an MLA, and nominated twice as member of Rajya Sabha. All through his life, he was an ardent proponent of representative form of government and dedicated his life for upholding democratic values. This lecture is organized in his fond memory and a tribute to his democratic values. He also authored the book 10 Ideologies, The Great Asymmetry Between Agrarianism and Industrialism, which expounds on 10 major ideologies that helped in shaping the world. As you all know, any discussion or discourse on democracy attracts a great interest from one and all. Democracy is always work in progress. After all, it deals with our lives and how we organize our societies. A key ingredient of democracy is federal form of governance. Federalism or decentralization remains a cornerstone of democracy, particularly for nations having large land area and with vast ethnic, ideological and linguistic diversities. India ticks all the boxes. Federalism or decentralization, there are certain crucial features that were enshrined in the Indian Constitution by the founding fathers of the nation, and there is more to accomplish owing to changing socio-political environment in the country. However, the society is as always divided in opinions with regards to power sharing mechanisms and arrangements between the center and regional governments. Some fear that too much federalism shall diffuse power to an extent that the nation may disintegrate. Others opine that federalism will strengthen at grassroots level and empower them to obtain government services with ease and without any adverse impact on their regional identities. What then is the best format for Indian polity? What are the limits of devolution of powers and what are its implications, benefits and long-term outlook? What are the current trends? And many more questions arise in this context. There is a lot to know about this topic from our eminent experts. Hence, I take the pleasure in inviting eminent speakers of the day onto the dais to enlighten us on the topic of the evening, democracy and decentralization. We are extremely fortunate to have Sri Shankar Aiyar as chief guest of today's program to share his expert views on the topic of the day. It is my honor, sir, to invite you onto the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, a thundering applause to Mr. Shankar Aiyar, former Union Minister for Government of India. We also have with us as guest speaker Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, a prolific writer, head of Center for Policy Alternatives, distinguished fellow at the Observer Research Foundation and author of several books. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in inviting Sri Mohan Guruswamy sir to the dais. It is an honor to have amongst us Professor K. Purushotham Reddy, an eminent environmentalist, political scientist and development activist. I cordially invite Professor Reddy to the dais. Dear all, please welcome Professor K. Purushotham Reddy with a big applause. We have personalities here who grace the dais, waiting to share their knowledge and wisdom on the topic of the day, democracy and decentralization. It is our duty to express our gratitude to them for accepting our invitation to be our guest speakers. There is something pure and heartfelt and emotional and genuine about a bouquet of flowers. It always helps in expressing gratitude. So I request Mr. Manohar Reddy to offer a bouquet to Shri Shankar Aiyar. Sorry, there's a correction. I request Ms. Leela Lakshma Reddy to offer a bouquet to Shri Shankar Aiyar. Ms. Leela Lakshma Reddy shall offer a bouquet to Shri Mohan Guruswamy sir. And a bouquet to Professor K. Purushotham Reddy. On this note, it is time to continue with the program. Though they do not need special introduction, it's my pleasure to say a few words about our distinguished speakers before inviting them to the podium. Our first guest speaker, Professor K. Purushotham Reddy. Professor Reddy is a contemporary and a good friend of Shri late S.Jaipal Reddy. He is an eminent environmentalist, political scientist and developmental activist. He received MA, MPhil and PhD in political science from Osmania University. His PhD thesis is titled Environmental Policy and Education, an investigative analysis of eco-degradation of Patancheru in Andhra Pradesh. He held several posts as an academician, as professor, head of department, and chairman of board of studies in the political science department. He was director for Center for Environmental Studies at Osmania University. He is a resource person for many universities and their academic staff colleges in the state. MCHRD, AP Judicial Academy, MIT School of Government, Pune, ESCI and Center for Cultural Resource Training as India's most eminent environmentalist. A true Gandhian in spirit with zero tolerance towards elements that disrupt social harmony and cause oppressions. He calls the society as his lab and dedicated his life for the cause of society and environment. So I cordially invite Professor K. Purushotham Reddy to the podium.
Respected Chief Guest, Sri Shankar Aiyar, our distinguished guest, Sri Mohan Guruswamy garu, distinguished invitees, members of the family of Jaipal Reddy garu. In fact, it is my privilege to be able to stand here because I have been associated with Jaipal Reddy garu. He was my senior in the college, and together we were products of our time. And those times, believe me friends, the system was open, where the mind was free and without fear. In the words of Rabindranath Tagore, we had absolute freedom. We could invite any person, we could listen to their speeches, we would have tremendous interaction. So there were no restrictions from the street side. And that was the time when we heard the who is who of India, right from Jawaharlal Nehruji and, Dr. Ram Manohar Lohiya, Vajpayee, you name it and I can tell. Even Supreme Court judges, Justice Gajendra Gadkar. So Jaipal Reddy being a product, a witness to those times. He was elected many times in the college. He became the OUSU president. Entire Osmania University had one students' union, and elected members from all the colleges would vote. So that was the time when there was freedom, when we were all products of. And I'm not saying that we participated in the freedom struggle, but definitely we were the first beneficiaries of the excellent leadership which emerged after independence. I do not wish to take much time, but it's very important that I recall my teacher, Professor Shivaya Garu, because the topic is Panchayat Raj. And Professor Shivaya, who was in Osmania University, subsequently joined NIRT. He was heading the Political Science Division of NIRT. It so happened that Rajiv Gandhi visited as Prime Minister NIRT, and in his speech, something which became very famous, he talked about the journey of a rupee. అంటే ఢిల్లీ నుంచి ఒక రూపాయి బయలుదేరింది, కానీ గ్రామ పంచాయతీ పోయేసరికి దాని వాల్యూ 15 అంటే అది 15 పైసలకు అంటే తరుగుడు పోయింది. సో మధ్యన ఎవరు కొట్టేసారు ఏం కదా, దట్స్ a separate story. But I wish to point out that there is a book in political science written by Harold Lasswell, and the name of the book is Politics is Who Gets What, When and How. The remaining I leave it for your imagination. So when the Prime Minister visited NIRT, he expressed his anguish. Then NIRT Director General suggested Professor Shivaya's name, and the Prime Minister and my teacher, they had a long conversation, and the task of drafting the Panchayat Raj Bill, which subsequently became 73rd and 74th, that was entrusted to Professor Shivaya Garu, and it is because of his immense contribution. Believe me, he was a great intellectual without even 1 degree of selfishness. He sacrificed his life for the growth of the knowledge. So because of that attitude, this wonderful legislation came into being. But during Rajiv Gandhi's time, when it was introduced, it was known as the 64th and 65th Amendment. But unfortunately, then Rajiv Ji did not have the majority in the Rajya Sabha, and therefore it could not be adopted. Subsequently, 2 other Prime Ministers, but during P.V. Narasimha Rao's time, he was able to garner the requisite majority, and that particular bill was adopted under it's known as the 73rd and 74th Amendment. I'm not going into the small little details, but I wish to point out what is the status. Today, definitely, the local governments enjoy what we call constitutional protection. To that extent, it is fine. But unfortunately, certain things have gone wrong in this country. The Election Commission, which is supposed to be autonomous, the State Election Commission, the State Finance Commission, in many a state, they know the policy of the state government, which is unfortunate. As a result, what is happening? The local panchayats, particularly you take it in even urban government, because myself and Subbarao-ji, during the COVID time, sir, we organized 100 webinars on the very many issues faced by Hyderabad and others similar urban areas in the country. I just wish to point out certain things which need to be rectified, because we are very fortunate to have our distinguished chief guest who is an authority on this subject, and we have in this hall Professor Shankar Aiyar, who is still recently retired from NIRT, but he is an authority unto himself. So the first point is, in spite of the constitutional status, local governments, that is panchayats and municipalities, they lack effective devolution of powers and functions from the state government. This is a general complaint throughout the country. It's not specific to our state. Second point is, at the district level and also at the state capital level, when it comes to the city, we have certain parallel institutions. For example, facilitate, in this country, at the grassroots level, a system of governance where direct democracy can manifest. Believe me, friends, I have visited many Gram Panchayats, and today we have quite a few sarpanches. I had the opportunity to participate in the Grama Sabhas, and believe me, nobody takes cognizance of what they decide. It is only one naam ke vaste. I'll go into the details subsequently. Then the subjects mentioned, that is the subjects which have been transferred to panchayats and also municipalities or municipal corporations, they are just illustrative. It's not a comprehensive list. But unfortunately what is happening is that these local governments are told that it is comprehensive. And there is no proper training. As a result, the local governments are not asserting. Actually, if only they are told, particularly the concept of the doctrine of implied powers, to implement one power, you can go on increasing the powers connected with it. Doctrine of implied powers, which is the doctrine which saved America. Anyway, we don't have Chief Justice Marshall type in this country, and we are paying a very heavy price. And even there is no proper leadership that is being trained at the panchayat level. As a result, they are feeling depressed. తెలుగులో చెప్పాలంటే వాళ్ళు ఏమనుకుంటారంటే మేమేం చేస్తాం సార్ అంటే ఒక విధమైన డిప్రెషన్, helplessness, and that is destroying the entire system. I come to the next one. We have at the national level NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, but at the state level, on paper also, we have SDMA. And again, whenever I say state, it is not the state. I am talking about the states in the country. State Disaster Management Authority, it should be allowed to, to work very effectively. For that, it should be given finances, personnel, and other facilities. And it should be working with the precautionary principle. Because disasters need to be prevented. There is very little that we can do once it manifests, except for certain kinds of disasters. Then we come to small little things which can be done tomorrow. For example, where is the need to give this local area development funds to MLAs and MPs? Local area development funds, they can be directly transferred to the local governments. Madhyana Veela Petarikamendi. Are we not trusting the wisdom of the people in the local government? The Grama Sabha is ultimate. So that can be done anytime. Sir, as all of us know, all the powers in this country are divided into, at the national level, central list, state list, and concurrent list. But then the power of local government, the power to manage local government, is vested with the state government. Now, why can't we trust the local governments? Why Madhyana state government పెద్దరికం ఎందుకు? సర్పంచ్లను నమ్మలేమా? Can't we trust the mayors? After all, just as we trust the central government, state government, we the people also trust. It is our own will. Please remember, it is we the people. When we vote for a national election, by virtue of our vote, some party becomes a ruling and someone becomes the prime minister. Same thing happens at the state level. Anyway, I request everyone to ponder on this. And lastly, I have seen so many Gram Panchayats, particularly when their meetings are going on. Suddenly we notice one MLA comes, the constituency MLA. And believe me, there is so much of ruckus. Everybody leaves everything, and their focus is on attending the MLA. This is very bad. Rule of law should be there. I don't understand the logic of MLA and MP I mentioned about the central list, state list and concurrent. Originally, India's state list had 66 powers. During the emergency, thanks to Mrs. Indira Gandhi, because when she imposed the emergency, definitely we all opposed it. But when Madam Gandhi did certain good things, definitely one should have the courage to appreciate. She has taken out from the state list 5 powers and added to the concurrent list. These are education, forests, protection of wild animals, administration of justice, weights and measures. I propose in this distinguished gathering that we should consider shifting the power that is there in number 5, entry 5, that is local government. That should be, you consider. I'm not saying, I'm nobody to say that it should happen, but definitely that can be considered as a big remedy, or it can be described as a corrective mechanism. And I'm looking forward to our chief guest, who is an authority on this. He has done tremendous work. Thank you, sir, for coming to Hyderabad, because we who have been living here, for us Delhi to bahut dur hai, but thanks to modern ways of communication and you being so accessible, almost the entire group that came to your house to invite us, they are here in the hall, sir. And thanks for coming. We look forward for your guidance, and because this is needed in the interest of India, in the interest of democracy, and we need to restore the confidence of the people, because on paper they have powers, but in reality, in Telangana, like in other states, ordinary collector, how dare he suspend a people selected Gram Panchayat, and on flimsy grounds? Can the chief secretary suspend just like the state government? Public opinion is public opinion. It can't be taken for granted. So I thank the foundation, S.Jaipal Foundation, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Enlightened us with all the effort and antecedents of the Panchayat Raj and the local government's amendments that have happened in Constitution of India. So thank you very much. Our next speaker of the day is Mr. Mohan Guruswamy, sir. Mr. Mohan Guruswamy is a well-known, astute analytical expertise on multiple subjects, and he's known for his wit and oratory skills. I watched some of his talks on TEDx, and he mixes a fair amount of humor with a lot of information. He has a vibrant career path that included teaching, senior management, journalism, and he's been an advisor to the Finance Ministry, Government of India, which has a rank of Secretary to the Government of India. He was actually a product of Nizam College, Hyderabad, where he did his graduation and went on to acquire post-graduation in public policy, international affairs and management. An alumnus of J.F. Kennedy School, Harvard University, Graduate School of Business, Stanford University. He is a frequent commentator on national and international media on matters of current interest. His papers on redefining poverty, income inequality, backwardness of Bihar, economic development in West Bengal, FDI in retail have been published in well-regarded journals. Mr. Guruswamy has been an avid traveler and author of several books. His recent books are The Looming Crisis in India's Agriculture, Issues in Development, India's World, Essays in Foreign Policy and Security Issues, India-China Relations, The Border Issue and Beyond. The latest being Chasing the Dragon, Will India Catch Up with China? So on this note, I cordially welcome Sri Guruswamy sir to deliver his speech.
thank you, Lakshmanji and Arvind, for inviting me here. And for the first time, I've been welcomed as a guest in my own house, so which is a unique experience. One of the people behind this center, the idea was Jaipal himself. We were very good friends, and Jaipal said, "You building this big building, what are you going to do with it?" So I said, "At least 5,000 feet, I'm going to make available for an adda for people to come meet and discuss for events like this." And we've had many events like this till the pandemic hit us, and this was just opening after that 2.5 years. So it's nice to start with a function in honor of my friend and on a subject which was very dear to him. The basic lesson in public administration is the nature of the regime determines the outcome. You might talk of democracy, you might talk of so many things, but how that regime is, what it actually is, determines the outcome. Now, I wrote my last book on comparison of China and India, and in 1950, China's public administration expenditures, the cost of government, was almost 73% at the center and 27% at the provinces and lower level. Highly centralized state. Communist Party is very high. So that's why they used to have that kind of a regime. If you have a decentralized government, then everybody will speak. If you have a centralized regime, only one person will speak. And India at that time, in 1950, was 42% central government. 47% central government, 42% state government, and 11% to local government. So you had this system. I thought to myself that you have 47 center, 42 state, and 11 at local level. So you got 9 fellows who will tell you what to do, and 1 person who will do something for you in government. That's a simple analysis of that. Then I studied the same situation in 1950. By then the Chinese have shifted from 70 center, they became 27 center, and everything had gone down. And they took all the big public sector companies, all that, and gave it to the provinces and said, "Do what you want with it. You want to sell it, sell it. But we are not going to give any money. We will only look after defense and telecommunications and these things." But in India, what happened? After all these talk of decentralization, Panchayati Raj, SKT, block development, all that, 47 became 42, and 42 became 47. 11 remained as it is. So at the bottom level, there is nobody. So I wrote a paper a few years ago after a big trip across the country, because I love traveling, because I get out of the city. So I noticed that there's no government outside the highway. You leave the highway, go 5 kilometers this side, there's no government. Because all the drains are filled with plastic, all the ponds are filled with plastic, all the sewage is in the village, because there's nobody responsible. We had a traditional system where people by caste did their work, but we said, no, this is not the way we're going to do it. You'll have a new system of government, and nothing's happening. Nothing works but there's no government. At best, the representative of government is a school teacher. He is the highest ranking fellow. Next is probably the forest guard or the clerk in the tehsil office. Because if you go to a village, particularly in central India, North India, the only pakka houses belong to the government employees. So the tehsil clerk or the forest guard or the police constable, they're pakka houses. Everybody else lives in thatched houses or in tiled houses. So that tells you who is getting the money in the village. So the result is that today, if you want a drain to be cleaned, you don't know where to go. You don't know who to ask. Because the fellow who should do it traditionally because of his birth, he's not doing it anymore. He says, I'm equal to you, why don't you do it? If Dora says, when Saaf se ate Dora, no Saaf se babu. Inni samajhtar mein cheshira mein no panchai. So that is the system. We come to a complete breakdown. meet. One of the reasons why is that we are short of, about 300 policemen to every 1,000 sanctioned. This is down the line, nurses, teachers, whose salaries are very high now. A police constable gets 30,000 rupees or 40,000 rupees. A clerk gets that much. School teacher gets that much. So the government doesn't have money to appoint more people. So they do contract labor. So a contract labor fellow will get 6,000 rupees to teach in a school, and the permanent employee will get 30,000 rupees. And the schools are not employed. Primary health centers don't have doctors because government has no money. But in spite of that, the total cost of government, how much of money we pay for government, is 11.4% of GDP. And if you add pensions and all those benefits, it becomes 12.5% of GDP. Then we have, all our other commitments. So biggest expenditure in government is salaries of government, public administration. But are you getting any return for it? Because if you go to a village, the social structure is upended. The government employee is the tallest fellow, so he's not going to listen to anybody. So every time I go to a school or a village and I ask where is the teacher, they say Dora was Ral. And I went to a panchayat, I spent a few days in a panchayat in Madhya Pradesh, in Betul, and the sarpanch, the lady elected as the Gram Pradhan, she would come, she came to the morning office, opened the office, then put the stove, made some tea. Then the secretary of the panchayat, the fellow lives in the district headquarters 40 kilometers away. He comes and he says, "Aai chai banai kya?" So that fellow is supposed to keep notes or records and all, but he is outranking her because he's got a motorbike, he's English speaking, he's a government employee. So the Aai is making tea. I was sitting and watching. Then he said to ledger law, kitna anaj hai, how much of rice is there, how much of wheat is there. So then she said, barabar hisab kare, then he went off. So government has effectively not transferred to people. So I said that something has to be done. One of the things the state government has done in its own way in this state is to have smaller districts, smaller collectorates, and then smaller mandals, etc. So you're taking government down to people. But yet you are still stuck with the problem of not having people to work for you. Even in a city, if your tap goes, who will you go to? Or your electric bulb outside the street is not working. By the time you call the fellow, it's taking 4-5 days. So there's nobody doing any work. And this cost of government is very high, so 9 people doing nothing. So when Rajiv Gandhi said 85% doesn't go down, this is what he meant, not corruption. There are too many fellows in between doing nothing. Corruption actually is not so big as we make out. Corruption in India is all small corruption, 5 rupees, 10 rupees, nothing, cup of tea. But if you want to see corruption, you must go to China. Everybody is corrupt. All the Politburo members have properties in America. All of them. Most of them are billionaires. Indian corruption is chota till Rafale and things started happening. It's very small. So I don't think we are hung up on corruption, but we should be looking at reforming government. Reform is decentralization, empowering people. I don't know why a school in a village should be run by the director of education sitting in Hyderabad, or the director of medical services is running a clinic somewhere else in Adilabad. The people of Adilabad, you should have, in the old days we used to have district medical boards, district education, they've all gone, all become nice and central. So when I was in government, one day I was asked by the then Home Minister to write a paper on decentralization. Because every government which comes says decentralized karna hai. They understand the problem. So I made a presentation and all that, and all the chief ministers invited. So Chief Minister of Gujarat was Keshubhai Patel. He heard carefully and he said, "ये सब करेंगे तो हमारे पास कौन आएगा?" So that is the basic question which Mani and his friends have to address. The minute government is decentralized, तुम्हारा दुकान बंद. So I think, is bring them all down. And we need to restructure government. And when Manmohan Singh said, I will reform government, how can you reform government? How can you destroy the system which put you there? So I think we've gone far. So either the system has to break down, or the country has to break down, or the entire system. So something has to be done. And something will happen. You can't continue like this forever. Sooner or later something will happen, and people of India have got a lot of life, a lot of strength, and once they're up, they're up. Thank you very much.
Guest, who is the eminent personality, Sri Shankar Aiyar sir. He is an iconic figure in political circles, a former diplomat who after a distinguished career in foreign service became a senior leader in the Indian National Congress. He was 4 times member of parliament, thrice to Lok Sabha from Mailadurai constituency, this is in Tamil Nadu, and was nominated once for the Rajya Sabha. He joined the Indian Foreign Service and served as the Joint Secretary to Government of India in Ministry of, and later he headed Ministry of External Affairs and later at Prime Minister's office. He attended Toon School where he took the role of student editor to the Toon School Weekly. This is where he met late Prime Minister Sri Rajiv Gandhi and they remained very close associates. Later he did his graduation in economics from Delhi University, followed up by Bachelor of Arts in Economics from Cambridge University. He joined the cabinet of Dr. Manmohan Singh-led UPA government where he was the head of Panchayat Raj. Shri Shankar Aiyar also held the portfolios for Ministries of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Youth Affairs and Sports, and Development of Northeastern Regions. In 2006, he was honored as the year's outstanding parliamentarian by the President of India. During his long tenure of public service, Mr. Aiyar developed a reputation for being an avid orator, a prolific newspaper and journal columnist, and an authority on South Asian politics. He has written several books, few of them dedicated to our late Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. He has always been an advocate of grassroots democracy and pressed for representative form of government, as he always carried a clear understanding about the process of devolution of power. So I cordially invite respected Chief Guest Sir, Sri Shankar Aiyar, to deliver his lecture. Welcome, sir.
Speakers, Shri Mohan Guruswamy Garu and Professor Purushotham Reddy Garu. I would particularly like to note the presence of several sarpanches from our panchayats who are among us, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I feel uncomfortable speaking to you in English. So, with everybody's permission, I'll mix some sentences in English with some sentences in Hindi, so that I hope I can get through to the most important segment of this audience, which I think are the sarpanches who have taken the trouble to come from their respective villages here to this meeting. महात्मा गांधी ने चाहा था कि पंचायत राज हमारी जमहूरियत का बुनियाद बने, और डॉक्टर अंबेडकर ने कहा कि ये कैसे हो सकता है, हमारे गांव में तो रद्दड़ है, कुछ भी नहीं है, लोग एक दूसरे को पीड़ित करते हैं, जो ऊंचे वर्ग के हैं, जो ऊंचे जात के हैं, वो अपनी तानाशाही चलाते हैं, और इसलिए हमने कुछ कोशिश किया कि गांव में लोगों को सुपुर्दगी करके In short, Dr. Ambedkar rejected the idea that Mahatma Gandhi had put forward of making Panchayati Raj the basis of our constitution, the basis of our democracy, on the ground that the villages of India are cesspits, that they are socially oppressive, that the higher castes will capture all power and they will use it in order to further oppress the Dalits. And that is why the Constitution of India has only a small one-line provision for panchayats in the directive principles of state policy, which means it's not justiciable. And it is there to be found in the Constitution. जबकि महात्मा गांधी को बताया गया कि मसौदा में पंचायत राज का कोई जिक्र ही नहीं है, तो उनको हैरियत हुई। उन्होंने कहा कि ये कैसे हो सकता है, लेकिन उनका देहांत 1 महीने के अंदर हो गया। और उसके बाद जबकि डॉक्टर राजेंद्र प्रसाद ने कहा कि आप पंचायत राज को ले आइए, उनको बताया गया कि बहुत देर हो गया है, और जबकि इस पर चर्चा होती है तो सही जगह पर कुछ न कुछ पंचायती राज के बारे में लिखा जाएगा। तो यही है बुनियादी कारण कि हमारे संविधान में जो कुछ भी करने का है केंद्र में और जो कुछ भी करने का है राज्य में, उसके लिए पूरा प्रावधान है, लेकिन जो करना चाहिए नीचे जमीन पर माटी के स्तर पर, वो नहीं होता है। Unfortunately, because the provision for Panchayati Raj is limited to a single sentence in the directive principles of state policy, which is not justiciable, we have a situation that while the Constitution has ensured that the center will have adequate powers and the state will have adequate powers, there was nothing provided for at the lowest level. This was left to the state governments to do. And the most remarkable thing is, the state governments did not do it. If they had panchayats, they would dissolve them. If they didn't have panchayats, they wouldn't create them. Sometimes panchayats would go on for 15 years. At other times, they'd be finished in 15 days. तो इसको दुरुस्त करने के लिए और वाकई तरक्की को निचले स्तर तक ले जाने के लिए, to ensure that development took place at the grassroots and that it was not confined to the center and state levels, Jawaharlal Nehru, after experimenting with the community development program, which he found unsatisfactory because it was bureaucratic rather than democratic, he came up with a suggestion, a model Panchayat Raj Act. पंडित जी ने सोचा कि इसको दुरुस्त करने के लिए, जबकि उनको पता लगा कि कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम जिसके जरिए ब्लॉक डेवलपमेंट ऑफिसर्स बनाए गए थे देश भर में और जिनके शिकार आप सब लोग हो, उस ब्लॉक डेवलपमेंट ऑफिसर को सारा सशक्त करके जनता के हाथ में कुछ नहीं रहा। तो इसलिए पंडित जी ने एक कमेटी बनवाया बलवंत राय मेहता के जरिए, और उन सिफारिशों के आधार पर उन्होंने एक मॉडल एक्ट तैयार किए। क्यों एक मॉडल एक्ट? क्योंकि पंचायतों को निर्माण करना वो राज्यों की जिम्मेवारी थी। तो उन्होंने कहा कि हम संविधान को नहीं बदलेंगे, हम इतना ही करेंगे कि हम उनको बताएंगे सब राज्यों को कि कैसा पंचायत राज को गठित किया जाए। और क्योंकि उस जमाने में मैं 1957 और 1962 की बात कर रहा हूँ, और तकरीबन सारे राज्य के सरकार कांग्रेस के थे और पंडित जी कांग्रेस सरकार चलाते रहे दिल्ली में, इसलिए हर जगह पंचायती राज का स्थापन हुआ। So Pandit ji decided that he would create a model act. Why a model act? Because the constitution said that panchayats are the responsibility of the state government. So since he was a strict constitutionalist, he could only prepare a model act and present it to the state governments. But in 1957 and 1962, virtually all state governments were with the Congress. And the central government was with the Congress. And the whole system was run by a giant whose word was the law. And therefore, Panchayati Raj got created, but as a private enterprise of the Prime Minister. There was no conviction that this should be done. The result was कि जबकि उनका देहांत हुआ 27 मई 1964 को, तो वहीं के वहीं पंचायती राज का भी देहांत हुआ. धीमे धीमे तकरीबन हर राज्य में जहाँ की पंचायत राज चलता था उसको छोड़ दिया या उसको बिगाड़ दिया. बस बॉम्बे प्रोविंस एक था जहाँ की आज के दिन महाराष्ट्र और गुजरात है, जहाँ की ये चलते रहा लेकिन अपने ही तरीके से. बाकी समस्त भारतवर्ष में कोई 5-10 साल के अंदर आप देखते तो पंचायती राज का न नाम न निशान रहा. So within a few years of Jawaharlal Nehru's passing away, there was almost no Panchayati Raj to be found anywhere in the country except in Gandhiji's province of Gujarat and in Maharashtra, where it had been very firmly fixed. So that is the situation that prevailed when Rajiv Gandhi came to power. और जब राजीव जी प्रधानमंत्री बने तो मेरी खुशकिस्मती रही कि मुझको उनके साथ देश का दौरा करना पड़ा. It was my good fortune that when Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister of India, it was one of my duties to organize and accompany him on his rural tours throughout the country. And what Rajiv saw is what Mohan Guruswamy told you about. जो राजीव ने देखा ग्रामीण इलाकों में, बस वो ही था जो कि मोहन गुरुस्वामी अब दौरे कर देख कर आ रहे हैं कि जो सरकारी नौकर हैं वो ही उन्हीं के दबाव में सब चल रहा है, और कि चुने हुए प्रतिनिधिगण जो हैं या तो वो है ही नहीं या हैं भी तो उनको अपना सर झुकाना पड़ रहा है और उनके घुटने टेकने पड़ते हैं जो सरकारी अफसर हैं उनके सामने. और कि जो अभी इन्होंने बताया कि टीचर जो है या कोई डॉक्टर हो वो ही बनते हैं जिनके पास पक्का घर हो और बाकी सब अपनी झुग्गी झोंपड़ी में रहते हैं. So what has been described by Mohan Guruswamy was exactly what Rajiv Gandhi found in his extensive tours through rural parts of almost every state of India. In fact, for some strange reason, the one state he did not go to was Sikkim. I don't know why he didn't go there. But if you leave aside Sikkim, whether it was the mountains of Arunachal Pradesh or the delta areas of Andhra Pradesh, or it was the Deccan Plateau, or it was the coastal areas of Tamil Nadu, or it was the deserts of Rajasthan, or it was the hills of Himachal Pradesh, he went to every part of India. He did not confine himself to the capitals. He went out among the people and he spent endless hours just trying to ascertain from the people themselves what it is that they were lacking and what could be the means of handing it over to them. तो जबकि वो अपने दौरे पर निकलते थे और भारत के हर राज्य में वो पहुंचे, सिवाय मुझे पता नहीं क्यों छोड़कर जो अरुणाचल प्रदेश के महान पहाड़ हैं वहाँ हो, या आंध्र प्रदेश के जो कोस्टल एरियाज हैं, आपके डेल्टा एरिया, गोदावरी डेल्टा हो, या तमिलनाडु के राज्य के जो ग्रामीण स्थान हो, या रेगिस्तान की बात हो, या पहाड़ों की बात हो, कोई ऐसा नुक्कड़ नहीं छोड़ा गया भारतवर्ष में जहाँ की भारत के प्रधानमंत्री ने खुद नहीं पहुंचा और अपने आंखों से गवाही की। वही चीज जिसका जिक्र हमारे मित्र मोहन गुरुस्वामी जी ने अभी आपके सामने पेश किया। लेकिन क्योंकि वो प्रधानमंत्री थे और मोहन गुरुस्वामी, बहुत अफसोस की बात है, प्रधानमंत्री नहीं है, इसलिए राजीव कुछ कर सकते थे उसके बारे में। So we were very fortunate that because Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister, he did not limit his activity to observing. He could also do something about it. And it was in fact here in Hyderabad, and mention has been made of that at the NIRD, that it became absolutely clear to him as to what needed to be done. इत्तफाकन इसी हैदराबाद में NIRD में जहाँ की वो पहुंचे थे और मैं भी उनके साथ था, उनको अचानक समझ में आ गया कि क्या करना चाहिए इस स्थिति को दुरुस्त करने के लिए। और वो था, the occasion was the second meeting of the district magistrates of India. प्रधानमंत्री राजीव गांधी ने तय किया कि बजाय मेरे समझने का कि क्या गलत है और कैसे उसको सही कर सकते हैं, मैं देश के समस्त डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट्स, जिनका नाम अलग अलग है, अलग अलग राज्यों में, कहीं डिप्टी कमिश्नर कहते हैं, कहीं कलेक्टर कहते हैं, कहीं डिप्टी कमिश्नर कहते हैं, लेकिन बिना एक को छोड़े इस देश के तकरीबन 600 इन अफसरान से वो मिले। और जबकि वो मिलते थे तो घंटों उनके बीच में बिताते थे। He would spend hours listening to what these 600 district magistrates had to say. And after the first meeting which was in Bhopal in December 1987, he said to me, Mani, have you noticed how all the bright district magistrates want the opinion of the people to run their administration, and all the idiots don't want it and want to be on their own? राजीव ने मुझसे पहली मीटिंग के बाद, जो कि दिसंबर सन 1977 में हुआ था, 87 में हुआ था भोपाल में, उन्होंने मुझे एक तरफ ले जाकर कहा कि आपने देखा है क्या कि जितने भी बुद्धिशाली डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट्स हैं वो सब कहते हैं कि जनता के प्रतिनिधियों से राय मशवरा करके हमने शासन को चलाया तो बेहतर होगा, और जितने भी बुद्धू हैं वो सब कहते हैं कि हम पर छोड़ दीजिए, हम अकेले कर सकते हैं, ये जो अनपढ़ हैं इनसे हमारा क्या लेना देना। लेकिन जहाँ की ये सवाल उठा था उनके मन में भोपाल में, कोई 3-4 महीने बाद फरवरी 88 में जब हम हैदराबाद पहुंचे और दूसरे डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट से हमारी यहाँ मीटिंग हुई, तब उनका मन स्पष्ट हो गया था कि हम सरकार को तभी सलाह सकते हैं माटी के स्तर पर जबकि जनता के प्रतिनिधि हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं, प्रशासन के साथ जुड़े हैं, और दोनों को एक साथ मिलकर इस बैलगाड़ी को आगे ले जाना है कि न तो यहाँ के जो चुने हुए प्रतिनिधिगण हैं वो अकेले अपने आप और बिना कोई सहारा कुछ सही काम कर सकते हैं, और नहीं कि कोई आईएएस का अफसर वहाँ डिस्ट्रिक्ट में पहुंचे और कहे कि मैं जानता हूँ सब कुछ क्योंकि मैं पढ़ा लिखा हूँ, मैं सेंट स्टीवंस का हूँ, मैं कैम्ब्रिज का हूँ, और इसलिए मुझे क्या सीखने की जरूरत है इन अनपढ़ गदगद लोगों से। तो दोनों की जरूरत है, और दोनों को बैलगाड़ी में लगाएं तो तभी गाड़ी आगे बढ़ेगी। It is only if the bureaucracy at the grassroots can be yoked to the same cart that the people's representatives are attempting to pull, that between the two of them they will be able to achieve what needs to be achieved. And then over the next 3 meetings, 3 और ऐसे मीटिंग्स हुए, एक मणिपुर में, इम्फाल में, एक जयपुर में और एक कोयम्बतूर में। तो मतलब पूरे देश में वो घूमे, अपने डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट से मिले। कभी कभी ऐसा हो जाता था कि हम मीटिंग में रात के 3 बजे पहुंचते थे, पूरा दिन यात्रा करने के पश्चात, और उनको बस अपना मुंह धोने का था और कुछ नहीं, पहुंच जाते थे और ऐसा काम बातचीत करते थे लोगों से जैसा कि सुबह का 9 बजे हो। लोग बेचारे सोते सोते जवाब देते थे उनको, और 3 बजे से लेकर 6 बजे तक हमारी बहस होती थी, और फिर 8 बजे को जनाब तैयार हैं कहने के लिए कि आज की यात्रा अब शुरू करें। अब मुझे पता नहीं कहाँ से उनको इतना दम मिला, और ये तो मैं ज़रूर नहीं बता सकता हूँ कि मुझको कहाँ से दम मिला उनके पीछे जाने का, लेकिन वो थे हमारे बॉस, तो इसलिए उनके कहने पर हम भी चलते थे। Anyhow, these meetings would go on at all hours of the day, and I particularly remember a meeting in Coimbatore after he had travelled through the whole of northern Tamil Nadu from the early morning and done a rally in the middle of the night. Then after 12 o'clock he arrived at 3 a.m. to meet these district magistrates, and he stayed with them till 6 in the morning, and then at 8 o'clock he was ready to start his day again. लेकिन इसका नतीजा ये था कि उन्होंने एक किस्म का मंथन करवाया कि जो अच्छा पंचायती राज है उसका अनुभव उन्होंने मिलाया गलत पंचायत राज के साथ। उनके मन में कोई ऐसी इच्छा नहीं थी कि कांग्रेस के राज्यों को बहुत अच्छा दिखाए और कि विपक्ष के राज्यों को बहुत बुरा दिखाए। खास तौर पर यहाँ आंध्र प्रदेश में जो एनटीआर साहब ने शुरू किया था, उसको जाकर जांच करने के लिए वो खुद निकले और अपनी गाड़ी चलाते हुए उस जमाने का जो आंध्र प्रदेश था, समस्त आंध्र प्रदेश, वहाँ पूरे घूमे और जगह जगह पर रोककर लोगों से पूछते थे, वहाँ के सरपंचों से पूछते थे, और एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट डेवलपमेंट प्लान करते थे एनटीआर साहब, उसको भी समझकर बंगाल में जहाँ की कम्युनिस्ट सरकार थी वहाँ बहुत अच्छा पंचायत राज चल रहा था, तो वहाँ से भी समझकर लेकर सबका एक मंथन बनाकर, और उसके बाद जो अमृत निकला वो ही अंत में जाकर पंचायत राज के संशोधन बने संविधान में। So what Rajiv used to do is to not consider who was in power in which state. Here in Andhra Pradesh, he travelled around the place with NTR, and NTR had attempted his own form of Panchayati Raj. So he picked something from that. He went all over Bengal, and whatever was available in that communist-run state, he accepted that. he went to Karnataka and was very impressed with what Ramakrishna Hegde, who was deadly anti-Congress, what was he doing? And he had a man, minister called Abdul Nazir, and he picked up everything he could from Abdul Nazir, and he threw all these elements into having the kind of manthan which produced, with the efforts of Mohini, the Amrit in our traditions, and what he produced was the Amrit of Panchayati Raj. And that was to say that Panchayat Raj will remain a state subject. यहाँ एक सुझाव दिया गया था कि हम स्थायी सरकार को स्टेट लिस्ट से निकालकर कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट में डालें ताकि हम पंचायत राज को बढ़ावा दें। लेकिन राजीव ने कहा नहीं, क्योंकि वो नहीं चाहते थे कि केंद्र और राज्य के बीच में झगड़ा शुरू करवाए। वो तो चाह रहे थे कि हमें स्थायी इकाइयों को सशक्त करना है, और वो एकमात्र हमारा लक्ष्य रहना चाहिए, और एकमात्र लक्ष्य रहने से ही कुछ करवा पाएंगे। So he ruled out any question of changing the constitution. And don't forget, that was the years of the Sarkaria Commission, and they had come out in 1987 with their report on center-state relations, and the Bombay judgment was about to come. So he didn't want to take the focus away from the empowerment of the panchayats and shift it into the controversy over the center and the states. At that time, Jaipal Reddy was in the opposition. उस समय जयपाल जी विपक्ष के नेता थे, और उन्होंने बड़ी मुखालिफत की ये जो पंचायत राज को लाने का प्रयास हो रहा था, और उनका बस यही कहना था खास तौर पर कि ये तो एक राज्य का विषय है, आप केंद्र में बैठकर क्या कर रहे हो, पीएम टू डीएम विदाउट सीएम, ये था उनका आलोचना। अब इसमें कोई खास सच नहीं थी, क्योंकि सीएम को बुलाते थे, कहते थे कि आप भी आइए, लेकिन अक्सर विपक्ष के सीएम खास तौर पर पहुंचते ही नहीं थे, और वो बस लगे हुए थे बोफर्स की बात करने में, शाबानों की बात करने में, और क्योंकि उनको ये आंदोलन चलाना था उनके खिलाफ, तो इस रचनात्मक काम में ऑपोजिशन के जो मुख्यमंत्री थे और ऑपोजिशन के जो मेंबर्स थे, राज्यसभा में तो बहुत थे, लोकसभा में कम थे, लेकिन उनकी मुखालिफत रही, ये हकीकत है। इसलिए उन्होंने कहा कि हम ऐसा करेंगे कि पहले हम स्थापित करेंगे कि संविधान के जरिए पंचायत राज होना ही चाहिए, कि पंचायतों के बिना आप रह नहीं सकते हो, तो कि ये एक मर्जी नहीं रही राज्यों का, ये उनका दायित्व बना, और आज तक वो सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि वही है कि आप जहां भी जाओ हमारे देश में, आपको पंचायत राज की इकाइयां मिलते ही हैं, सरपंच मिलते ही हैं, और जो उन्होंने आरक्षण का इंतजाम किया था वो मुकम्मल तौर पर इस देश में चल रहा है। किस हद तक, कुछ आंकड़े मैं आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूं। The great thing about what Rajiv did was to make it constitutionally obligatory to implement the directive principle of state policy, that you must have panchayats. You can't get away from it. I've often used the expression, which I can't translate into Hindi, that he made Panchayati Raj ineluctable, irreversible, and irremovable. You just had to have Panchayati Raj. And till today, that has been the big success of Panchayati Raj. There's nowhere you can go in the country without finding panchayats. And the officials concerned. As also, most importantly, the reservation system that he thought up to answer Dr. Ambedkar's point. क्या चमत्कार जरा समझ लीजिए. उन्होंने कहा कि हाँ, राज्य या देश के स्तर पर 22% जो हमारी जनता है वो शेड्यूल्ड कास्ट से जुड़ी हुई है. तो बजाय ये कहने का कि हर पंचायत में 22% आरक्षण रहेगा, उन्होंने कहा नहीं, आप गांव में जाकर देखिए, जहाँ की या उन गांवों में जाकर देखिए जहाँ की पंचायत स्थापित होने वाला है, और वहाँ जो भी शेड्यूल कास्ट का हिस्सा हो तदनुसार आरक्षण होगा. तो यदि गांव के स्तर पर 40% एससी है तो 40% आरक्षण होता है, और यदि किसी और गांव में 10% ही एससी है तो 10% ही आरक्षण होता है. नतीजा ये कि जबकि आप गांव के स्तर पर, तालुका के स्तर पर या ब्लॉक के स्तर पर और फिर जिला के स्तर पर आरक्षण को कुल मिलाकर देखोगे तो 22% ही आएगा. लेकिन हर एक गांव में जहां के ज्यादा एससी लोग रहते हैं वहां उन्हीं का राज होगा, और जहां की कई दूसरे लोगों का होता है, ठीक है, वहां दूसरों का होगा. लेकिन इससे भी आगे उन्होंने महिला आरक्षण के लिए इंतजाम किया. आज के दिन जब आप लोकसभा को देखें तो हालांकि हमारे देश की आबादी में 50% या आधी आबादी महिलाओं की है. कितने महिलाएं हैं लोकसभा में? शायद 8% महिलाएं, और देश में 50% महिलाएं हैं. और उन्होंने कहा कि नहीं, उन्होंने शुरू किया 1/3 से, फिर आगे बढ़ते बढ़ते अब 15 राज्यों में 50% हो चुका है आरक्षण. सो महिलाएं जो निचले स्तर के हैं वो सब इन इकाइयों में आ चुके हैं. और आप पूछेंगे कि कितने, तो मैं कुछ आंकड़े आपके सामने रखना चाहता हूं. There are altogether about 250,000 village panchayats in India. Now to these 250,000 panchayats we have and then the urban local bodies, we have elected a total of some 3.4 million, 34 lakh representatives. Let me translate that into Hindi. हमारे देश में तकरीबन 2.5 लाख 250,000 गांव हैं, और हमने चुनकर निकाला है कोई 34 लाख प्रतिनिधिगण, जो कि हमारे स्थायी इकाइयों में ग्रामीण स्तर पर और फिर ऊंचे के स्तर पर चुनकर निकाला है. अब पहले क्या था परिस्थिति कि कोई 500 लोग थे जो कि चुनकर जाते थे दिल्ली, और कोई 4,500 थे जो कि चुनकर जाते थे हैदराबाद और अन्य जो राज्य की राजधानियां हैं. बाकी बैठे रहो. राजीव की क्रांति इतनी थी कि जहां की 5,000 लोगों का शासन चलता था देश भर में, कश्मीर से कन्याकुमारी तक, आज के दिन गांव में 34 लाख प्रतिनिधिगण हैं. 34 लाख, और इनमें से 14 लाख महिलाएं हैं। 14 लाख महिलाएं, 14 lakh elected women. India has more elected women than in the rest of the world put together. गजब की बात है कि भारत में चुने हुए महिलाओं की संख्या दुनिया भर के चुने हुए महिलाओं से ज्यादा है। अब तालियां तो बजने ही रही हैं, लेकिन मेरा ये कहना है कि मुझको यहाँ आने की क्या जरूरत थी आपको बताने के लिए? आप खुद क्यों नहीं इसको जानते थे? एक ही कारण कि ये जो 14 लाख महिलाओं का मैं जिक्र कर रहा हूं, वो सब गरीब हैं, वो सब पिछड़े जात के हैं, वो सब SC ST हैं। तो हमारे ठेठ मैडम जो कि कांजीवरम साड़ियां पहनती हैं, वो कहते हैं कि हमारे लिए क्या जगह है, कुछ नहीं है, तो इनको जो हमारी नौकरानियां हैं उनको जगह देकर हमें क्या फायदा? It is a tragedy that this great achievement of independent India as a result of Rajiv's move is so little known only because women of a certain upper class do not get adequate representation in parliament or the assemblies. So they dismiss what we have achieved for their servants and their servant sisters. And we have a very dirty system going on in Haryana and Rajasthan to prevent uneducated women from coming to the top, which is by laying down restrictions on the number of children they can have. If they had 2 children when they were elected and get a 3rd child while they are in office, they immediately dismissed. If they haven't paid their electricity bills, they can't stand in the elections. If they have taken a loan from a bank and have not repaid it, they can't stand in the election. If they haven't passed such and such a class, they can't stand for a panchayat election. If they haven't passed such and such a class, they can't stand for a taluka election. If they haven't passed such and such a class, they can't stand for a district election. The result is that 85% of the women who were elected in Haryana before these rules came in, 85% of them did not qualify to stand in the next election. और इसका क्या नतीजा है जरा सुन लीजिए और समझ लीजिए और अपने आईफोन्स को जरा छोड़ दीजिएगा। सुनो, ये एक अनोखी मौका है। ये महिलाओं को देखते हुए कि ऐसे उभर कर आ रही हैं कि हमारी नौकरानी बन रही है सरपंच, जबकि हम यहाँ बैठे हैं घर में अपने कांचीवरम साड़ी में। तो इसलिए इन 2 राज्यों में, और शुरू हुआ था राजस्थान में जहाँ की एक महिला चीफ मिनिस्टर थी वसुंधरा राजे, कि ये कहो कि 2 बच्चे से कम हो तो आप खड़ी हो सकती हो, लेकिन जीतने के बाद आपका 3रा बच्चा हो गया तो तब फौरन आपका डिसमिसल होगा। ये कहते थे कि आपकी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बिल को आपने नहीं काटा तो तब आप खड़े नहीं हो सकते हो, कि आपने ऋण लिया हो बैंक से और उसको वापस नहीं दिया हो तो तब आप खड़े नहीं हो सकते हो, और जब तक कि आपने फलाने क्लास को नहीं पास किया आप पंचायतों में नहीं खड़े हो सकते हो, फलाने क्लास नहीं पास किया तो आप तालुका पंचायत में नहीं खड़े हो सकते हो, और फलाने क्लास को नहीं पास किया तो आप डिस्ट्रिक्ट पंचायत में नहीं आ सकते हो। और इसका नतीजा ये था कि हरियाणा में 85% महिलाएं जो चुनकर आई थी इन नए नियमों के पहले, वो खड़ी भी नहीं हो सकी। दूसरे इलेक्शन में। और ये सवाल नहीं पूछा गया कि क्यों आम जनता अनपढ़ गरीब औरत के लिए वोट डाल रही है, जबकि इतने शानदार और बिल्कुल टॉप महिलाएं हैं गांव में, जो कि चौधरी की बीवी हों या किसी रेड्डी की बीवी हों। कारण बहुत सिंपल था। वो देखते थे कि जो ऊंचे वर्ग की महिलाएं हैं वो चली जाती थी चंडीगढ़ या हैदराबाद या मद्रास, और कभी कभी गांव में आती थी, जहां की गरीब औरत वहीं की वहीं रहती थी, क्योंकि उसके पास साधन नहीं थे कहीं और जाने के लिए। तो आप सीधा उनके घर जा सकते थे, कोई कुत्ता नहीं था बाहर भौंकने के लिए। आप जाओ, खटखटाओ और कहो महिला से कि मेरे घर में मेरे नलके में पानी नहीं आ रहा है और कल सुबह तक नहीं आया तो तुम्हें वोट नहीं मिलेगा कल। अब किसकी हिम्मत होगी कि जो बहुत बड़ा लैंडलॉर्ड है उसके घर में जाए, खटखटाए और महिला से कहे कि कल शाम तक मेरी नाली से सारा जो गंद है वो निकले नहीं तो तुम्हें वोट नहीं दूंगा। तो यही कारण है कि गरीब के लिए वोट डाल रहा था, और उनको कोई इतराज नहीं था कि वो गरीब महिला के लिए वोट डाले, क्योंकि आखिर गरीब महिला को अपने जीवन कमाने के लिए उनको बाहर जाकर काम करना पड़ता है, जहां की हमारे ऊंचे वर्ग के जो महिलाएं हैं वो घर बैठी रहती हैं या दुपट्टा को ऐसे करके निकलती हैं। तो इसलिए वो खड़ी नहीं होती थी, और खड़ी हो गई तो कैसा चुनाव लड़े, क्योंकि चुनाव लड़ना हो तो आपको जाना पड़ेगा, किसी अनजान के दरवाजे पर खटखटाना होगा, और वो आदमी आएगा अपने तहमत पहनते हुए, यहाँ तुम कौन हो, और तुम कहो कि मेरा नाम रीटा है और मैं खड़ी हो रही हूँ और आप उषा को वोट मत दीजिए, मुझे दीजिए। ये तो गरीब औरत कर सकती है, अमीर औरत कर सकती है क्या? तो एक क्रांति चल रही है हमारे ग्रामीण इलाकों में कि जो दबे हुए महिलाएं थे, दबे हुए वर्गों को छोड़िए, जो दबे हुए महिलाएं थे, और वो भी सबसे दबे हुए थे दबे हुए वर्गों के, वो आज उभर कर आ गई हैं और ये पदों को वो संभाल रही हैं। और ये लोग क्या कहते हैं जो शहर में रहते हैं कि नहीं, ये तो सरपंच राज चल रहा है कि पंचपति काम करता है। तो मैं भी गया इसी के साथ, जबकि मैं पंचायत मंत्री था, दौरे करता था, तो राजस्थान के एक गांव में एक महिला बहुत ही शानदार तरीके से जो भी सवाल मैं कर रहा था पंचायती राज के बारे में, उनके गांव की हालत के बारे में, बहुत ही सुंदर जवाब दे रही थी। और अचानक एक सवाल के जवाब में एक आदमी उठा और उन्होंने इसके जानिब से जवाब दिया। तो मैं उसकी तरफ देखा और मैंने कहा कि मैंने सवाल तो मैडम से किया है और तुम कौन हो जवाब देने का? उनका शानदार जवाब आ रहा है तो मैं उन्हीं की बात सुनना चाहता हूँ। तो फिर मैं आगे बढ़ा और जबकि एक और सवाल किया, दोबारा ये आदमी खड़ा हुआ। तो मैंने कहा कि आखिर तुम हो कौन? और सब लोग हंसने लगे। कहा कि ये तो सरपंच के शौर हैं और इसलिए वो जवाब दे रहे हैं। और फिर उस महिला ने मेरी तरफ घूम कर कहा, और ये गांव की सरपंच है और मैं हूं केंद्रीय मंत्री। उस जमाने में बहुत बड़ा आदमी हुआ करता था, अब तो सब खत्म हो गया, लेकिन उस जमाने में मैं केंद्रीय मंत्री था। और ये लड़की एक गांव की सरपंच। तो उन्होंने मुझसे कहा कि साहब, मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि आपका क्या इतराज है। हम दोनों की शादी 50 साल से हो चुकी है, हमारे 4-5 बच्चे हैं उनका पालना, उनका देखभाल करना हम दोनों ने एक साथ दिया। और जो भी मुझको दिक्कत होती है जिंदगी में, उसमें वो मेरे सहारे के लिए आते हैं। और जो भी संकट में वो पड़ जाते हैं तो मैं अपने तरफ से उनकी हालत ज़रा सुधारने की कोशिश करते हूँ। तो अब ये एक नया काम मुझको दिया गया है। मैं तो पहले कभी सरपंच नहीं रही हूँ। और मैंने अपने शौहर से पूछा कुछ मदद के लिए, तो आपको क्या इतराज़ है कि वो मुझे मदद करते हैं? एंड आई वॉज अनएबल टू आंसर। आई नो दैट इन माई लाइफ, whenever I am down, it's my wife who pulls me up. And whenever I am floating too much in the air, it's my wife who pulls me down, brings me to reality. So if I need my wife, well, why shouldn't she need her husband? And why all this talk of Sarpanch Pati? It's all a way of denigrating women. So if you want gender equality, the only way of doing it is this. I know a scheduled caste woman in Himachal Pradesh, in the district of, I forgot his name, Solan. She has been continuously the village president for the last 25 years. She was first elected when the post was reserved for women. Then she was elected when the post was reserved for Dalits. Then she was elected when it was a general post. And now she continues to be elected whatever is happening because she does a good job. And it's not isolated. I have met them all over the place. In Karnataka, your neighboring state, when I was minister, that's why I got the details, the scheduled caste women are entitled to 33% of the reserved seats. But the actual results showed that 54% of the elected scheduled caste candidates were scheduled caste women. And that the number of the percentage of scheduled tribe women who were elected was 63%. Why? Because these women work. They are co-earners with their husbands. They know how to go into the market. They are the ones who have to demand कि नहीं, मुझको 100 रुपए मिलना चाहिए, आपने मुझे 90 रुपए दिए. They are the ones who सौदा करते हैं. They are the ones who are not sitting at home. They are out in the public space. और इसलिए वो उभर कर आई हैं, आगे बढ़ गई हैं. और इतना आगे बढ़ गई हैं कि हमारे देश के 15 राज्यों में महिलाओं का आरक्षण 50% बढ़ा गया है। और मैं उस दिन का इंतजार में हूँ जबकि पार्लियामेंट इसको 50% करे हर राज्य में। क्यों नहीं? आखिर आधा मानव जाति तो महिलाओं का है और उनको अपना सही स्थान देना यही तो न्याय बनता है। और इनमें से ज्यादातर गरीब हों और निचले वर्गों के, तो तब खुशी ही खुशी। इसमें क्या शिकायत करने की जरूरत? हमारा सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि ये है कि हमारे देश में जो चुनकर हमने महिलाओं को निकाला है उनकी संख्या समस्त विश्व में जो चुने हुए लड़कियां हैं, महिलाएं हैं, उनसे ज्यादा भारतवर्ष में अकेला है। और इस तत्व को कोई नहीं जानता, कोई नहीं मन की बात में बताता, क्योंकि उनके मन में इस बात है या नहीं मैं नहीं जानता। यही है दिक्कत कि जो हमारी उपलब्धियां हैं हम उनको नहीं बताते, हम बस शिकायतों को बताते हैं। और शिकायतों को बताना बहुत जरूरी है। आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू से दैट वी मस्ट हाइड द डिफेक्ट्स। पंचायती राज has a lot of defects. Its main defect is that while the mandatory provisions, that is what you have to do, जो मजबूरियां हैं हमारे संविधान में कि आपको पंचायतों को गठित करना ही चाहिए, कि चुनाव करवाने ही चाहिए, कि स्टेट फाइनेंस कमेटी होना ही चाहिए, कि स्टेट इलेक्शन कमेटी होना ही चाहिए, ये सब जो मजबूरियां हैं वो तो हमारे राज्यों ने पूरा स्वीकार कर लिया, लेकिन बहुत से प्रावधान हैं जो कि सशक्तिकरण से जुड़े हुए हैं और वो मजबूर नहीं करता है, वो सिफारिश देता है राज्यों को कि आप ये कीजिए वो कीजिए. सो द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजंस आर recommendatory. Whatever is mandatory is happening all over the country. Whatever is recommendatory is not happening. जो भी मजबूरियां हैं उसको तो राज्य सरकारों ने चुन लिया है, अपना लिया है, लेकिन जो सिफारिशें हैं उनको वहीं के वहीं छोड़ दिया है. तो इस परिस्थिति में आप क्या कर सकते हैं? What are the steps that you can take to ensure that the mandatory provisions, that the recommendatory provisions of the Constitution are given the same status as the mandatory powers? Well, the answer is very simple. It is that all state governments have enacted conformity legislation to the constitutional provisions. And those are justiciable. After all, the State Act on Panchayati Raj is common law. You can challenge it. A constitutional provision, you have to show that there's a constitutional infirmity. Otherwise, the Supreme Court won't take note of it. But your high courts are there for you to say that the state government, the state legislature, has accepted all the 29 subjects that are illustratively mentioned in the Constitution, but made them a state obligation in the state legislation. That there is a model for devolution. That first you decide what are your panchayats going to do. You don't have to start with 29. What are the 6 or 7 functions that are going to be performed by the states, by the panchayats? That is the first F, the functions. The next F is the finances. काम करना हो तो साधन की जरूरत है. आप ये कह दें कि हाँ आप शिक्षा चलाइए, गांव का शिक्षा, लेकिन गांव की शिक्षा के लिए आपने पैसा नहीं दिया तो कैसे चलाएगा? तो जो होता है, जो फंक्शंस हैं, उसके साथ फाइनेंसेस भी भेजने हैं और अधिकारी गण को भी भेजना है. तीसरा एफ बनता है फंक्शनरीज, जिसका मतलब है अधिकारी गण. तो सबसे पहले यू हैव द फंक्शंस, द फाइनेंसेस एंड द फंक्शनरीज. तीनों इकट्ठे आ गए तो तभी जाकर सरपंच काम कर सकता है. आपने अटक कर इसको दिया कि हाँ ये आपका काम है करो, लेकिन पैसे सब सरकारी नौकर के साथ रहते हैं. कि जो सरकारी नौकर है वो आपकी बात नहीं सुनता है, वो कहता है कि मंत्री पता है. Dysfunctional. So Panchayati Raj has been made dysfunctional by the non-observance of the provisions of the state law. So don't change the position of the panchayats from the state list to the central list or the constitutional list. If you try to do that, you are centralizing in the name of decentralization. But if people like Professor Purushotham Reddy and NGOs are able to go to the Hyderabad High Court and say that this is what is written in the Andhra Pradesh law, and the reality is that it is not happening, and produce all these punches, these sarpanches as your witnesses, how can a High Court deny you? लिखा हुआ है कानून में. कानून को बनाने वाली है तेलंगाना की सरकार और लागू नहीं किया तो उन पर शिकायत लग सकता है और दंड लगेगा कोर्ट की तरफ से, और उसके बाद भी उन्होंने नहीं किया तो तब आप कोर्ट में जा सकते हो, कह सकते हो कि ये कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ कोर्ट है। अब मैंने सोचा था कि शायद केंद्र कर सकता है, लेकिन केंद्र को किसी राज्य को हाई कोर्ट में ले जाना या सुप्रीम कोर्ट में ले जाना हमारे संविधान के अनुसार ये असंभव है। तो आप ही जो सिविल सोसाइटी के लोग हैं या पंचायतों के लोग हैं, सरपंचों का कोई संगठन हो तो उसके तरफ से आप कोर्ट में जा सकते हो और कह सकते हो कि कानून में ये लिखा है, लेकिन हकीकत जमीन के स्तर पर ये है। तो इसलिए आप कृपया सरकार को बताइए, उनको मजबूर कीजिए कि जो कानून उन्होंने खुद बनाया है उसको अमल में लाना उन्हीं का काम है, और जब तक कि वो नहीं लाते हैं तब तक कोर्ट के कंटेम्प्ट में है, तब काम बन सकता है। तो इस क्रांतिकारी काम मैं आप पर छोड़ रहा हूं। आप चाहते हो तो मैं भी आपके साथ आ सकता हूं, लेकिन कदम तो आपको उठाना होगा। हम दिल्ली में बैठे तेलुगु न जाने क्या कह सकते हैं कि गांव में क्या हो रहा है, आप ही जानते हो। आपको हमें बताने की जरूरत नहीं है। आप ही अपना दस्तावेज दरख्वास्त तैयार कीजिए, वकीलों की कोई कमी नहीं है, वकीलों का जो राय मशवरा है वो ले लीजिए और उसके साथ पिटीशन तैयार करवाइए, और सरकार जो भी रंग का हो, टीआरएस का हो या कांग्रेस का हो या कम्युनिस्ट का हो, उनको सीधा अदालत के सामने पेश कीजिए और कहिए कि ये उन्होंने खुद अपने कानून में, अपना लिखा हुआ कानून में ये बताया है और ये नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो इसको सही करने के लिए क्या किया जाए। यहां आप इनकलाब जिंदाबाद कह सकते हो, लेकिन किसी और पर छोड़ना कि और कोई आएगा, कोई पुरुषोत्तम रेड्डी आएगा या कोई मोहन गुरुस्वामी आएगा, चलता नहीं है। आप ही लोगों को खुद कर, इसलिए मैं आपकी तरफ देखकर बोल रहा हूं, ये आपके लिए संदेश है। आप अपना संगठन बनाइए, और आपको पता न हो कि कैसे बनाएं तो बगल में जो कर्नाटक राज्य है वहाँ बहुत अच्छे संगठन बनाए गए हैं पंचायतों का, केरल में भी बनाए गए हैं, मेरे ख्याल में एक हद तक तमिलनाडु में भी है। मैं नहीं जानता कि यहाँ है या नहीं, और मैं नहीं जानता कि बंटवारा के बाद जबकि आंध्र प्रदेश को अलग किया गया तेलंगाना से, कि कोई संस्थान तब हुआ होगा जो कि, और उसकी क्या हालत है आज। लेकिन क्योंकि ये आपके स्वार्थ से जुड़ा हुआ है, क्योंकि आपको अपना काम करने के लिए छूट मिलना चाहिए, तो ये कदम आप ही उठाइए, और आपके साथ जुड़ने के लिए बहुत से एनजीओज होंगे, बहुत से वकील होंगे जो मुफ्त में भी ये काम करने को तैयार होंगे, और फिर हम देखें कि कौन इस क्रांति को रोक सकता है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, नमस्कार, जय हिंद।
And I'm sure our sarpanches here will take necessary action. No conversation about democracy can be conducted without mention of the ideological seeds Mahatma Gandhi has sown, or the constitutional provisions drafted by Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And okay, sir, there is somebody who wants to ask a question. As I was saying, that no conversation about democracy will be conducted without mention of the ideological seeds sown by the father of the nation and the constitutional provisions drafted by Baba Sahib Ambedkar and the democratical institutions set up by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Thank you very much, sir, for all the information you have given, especially your experiences with the late Prime Minister Sri Rajiv Gandhi and the noble works he has done towards empowering the Panchayat Raj is really commendable. And it is really quite a bit of information that we all need to know. Thank you. And there is amongst us a lady. Sir, talking about women empowerment, एक महिला है जो कामयाब है, सशक्त है, जो आपको एक छोटी सी तोहफा देना चाहती है. So I invite Anuradha Sarpanch from Kolkolpalli village. She has a small gift to offer to you, sir. So a big applause to Anuradha. So they say that when there is darkness, it's a small spark that rekindles us. We are really thankful to our wonderful speakers who have filled in with so much information and knowledge today.
There is one more person, sir, Professor Shankar Aiyar from NIRD, same place where whole activity was centered. Shankar Aiyar, please come.
Shankar sir, former minister, and gatherings, because I have given just 2 minutes time. Earlier told me to speak 2-3 minutes. I will just speak. Respect to the S.Jaipal Reddy sir, who has a great personality, because he fought those days with Mukesh Ambani sir. And I will speak little bit Telugu, though my mother tongue Bengali, Desa Bhasha Londu Telugu lessa. Due to Panchayat, that I actually prepared sir told to speak, but time is, I understand. Panchayat, there are a lot of development in Telangana. So, few statistics I will hand over if possible to give. Because the Panchayat Raj developed the Mahatma Gandhi NREGS, 100 days work. And Telangana, lot of persons have been benefited, because last 30 years, Nenu Telangana, Pura district visited Raipundi. And lastly, today is a very auspicious day, though 9th May, 7th May, there is a great personality, Telugu person born in India. Sir was telling, many do not know, we do not highlight. Sitarama Raju, Aluru Sitarama Raju, 26 years age, he fought for the democracy and he was killed by the British. Correct? We should highlight this type of names, because we are enjoying democracy because of like Sitarama Raju, Aluru Raju. And lastly, sir, I visited 50 countries, and Chinese people told Indian democracy is very good. I have written an article. Chinese people told, because China you cannot highlight. If you ask what is the Tibetan policy, they can, in Telugu, like that. So scared of the Chinese rule. Till now, few years back visited. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir, for giving the opportunity.
This is Professor Shankar Aiyar, one of the leading professors on the subject of Panchayat Raj in India. And one more person, that is my friend B.V. Subbarao, who is an international consultant when it comes to environmental issues, and he has been working on the
Thank you so much, Professor Purushotham Reddy garu, Shankar Aiyar garu, and Mohan Guruswamy. From my young days, I started my career at the age of 23 in Bastar as a central government employee, and I was hearing only three things. We praise small farmer, and we promote corporate farming. I do not understand the logic and the Indian mindset. And small industry, self-employed industry. Today we are inviting with a red carpet the MNCs from anywhere in the world. We are repeating what has happened before the colonial period. And today we are talking on democracy, that too on Panchayat Raj system, where we have 250,000 panchayats, not Raj. We have created panchayat and havoc in 250,000, and we are unable to sustain. At the same time, when we refer to Mahatma Gandhi ji, the villagers are the backbone. We are removing one bone after the other from the back. So where is the country left? Today we are passing through an utter chaos, the country. Today we need to discuss on these issues, and really I am thankful for participating in this your talk. One thing I could not understand, you said that state law, you have a state law where I can question the state. When the state itself amends the panchayats and the local government acts in the assembly, because it has the complete majority, where do we go? I think it is time to go for a wider debate on Panchayat Raj system. And thank you so much. Thank you so much.
several times. He is at the downstream of Hyderabad, this village, and they receive all the effluents, garbage, pollution, everything, a whole river has been poisoned. Sir, this is not the only village. Now let us assume the entire Gram Panchayat Act is being implemented, everything fine. Now what is their fault? Why are they living under those conditions? Grama Sabha organized, passed several resolutions, nothing happens. They are at the very pitiable, they have lost their right to clean air, clean water, clean surroundings, in fact livelihood, and their generations together they are condemned to be there. So Shankar, you just 1 minute.
అందరికీ నమస్కారం. సార్ వాళ్ళకి నమస్కారం. అందరికీ శంకర్ అయ్యర్ గారు, గురుస్వామి గారికి, పురుషోత్తం రెడ్డి సార్ గారికి. మాది ఎల్లాబాద్ గ్రామం, గట్కేసర్ మండలం. మాది అంటే గత 2000 సంవత్సరం కంటే ముందు నుంచి 96 నుంచి ఒక నది ప్రవహించే జీవనది ఏదైతే ఉన్నదో మూసీ నది, ఆ జీవనదిని గత పాలకులే అనుకోండి, పొల్యూషన్ కంట్రోల్ బోర్డు వాళ్ళే అనుకోండి, పరిశ్రమల యజమానులే అనుకోండి, ఈ ముగ్గురు కలిసేసి ఒక నదిని పాడు చేసిండ్రు, కాలుష్యం చేసిండ్రు పూర్తిగా రసాయనాలతోటి. అంటే అక్కడ ఉన్నది మొత్తము వికారాబాద్లో పుట్టిన మూసీ నది అనంతగిరి కొండలలో వాడపల్లి కృష్ణాలో కలుస్తుంది, మళ్ళీ ఆంధ్రకు పోతుంది. అంటే ఇక్కడ జీవనదిని నాశనం పట్టించేసేసి కృష్ణాలో కూడా కలుషితం అయిపోయింది. దాన్ని తాగునీరు, సాగునీరు రెండు వాడుకుంటుండ్రు. ప్రజలకు నాటేయడానికి పోతే కాళ్ళకు చేతులకు అవన్నీ కురుపుల్లాగా అయ్యి స్కిన్ డిసీజ్ కావడం జరుగుతుంది. అదేవిధంగా గతంలో ఇప్పుడు నీళ్లు కొనుక్కొని తాగుతున్నారు కాబట్టి సార్ వాళ్ళు, సుబ్బారావు సార్, పురుషోత్తం రెడ్డి సార్ వాళ్ళు వీళ్ళందరూ కూడా కలిసి నాకు సహకరించారు కాబట్టి అది జీవనదిని కలుషితం చేసిండ్రు. దానికి రిపోర్ట్స్ ఆధారాలతో చూపించేస్తే ఆ తాగే నీళ్లను, మూసి పక్కకున్న నీళ్లను, డ్రింకింగ్ వాటర్ను తాగకుండా కొనుక్కొని ఫిల్టర్ నీళ్లు పెట్టుకోవడం అనేది 2000 సంవత్సరంలో కూడా జరిగింది. వాస్తవానికి దీన్ని కూడా మీడియా మిత్రులు మన HMTV నుంచి కూడా మూసి బచావో యాత్ర చేసి దాని గురించి రామచంద్రమూర్తి సారు వీళ్ళందరూ కూడా ఇది చేయడమే కానీ, అదేవిధంగా వార్తా బ్యూరో చీఫ్ గారు అప్పుడు అందరు సహకరించబట్టే ఈ నీళ్లను తాగొద్దని ప్రజలు డిసైడ్ అయినరు. కానీ ఇప్పుడు పశుపక్షాదులు అవన్నీ కూడా టోటల్గా అంటే పీల్చే గాలి, అంటే తాగే నీరు, తినే ఆహారము, 3 విషయము, ఆహారము, గాలి, అదేవిధంగా తిండి, 3 విషపూరితమైనటువంటి అనేది మేము తినడం జరుగుతుంది. కావున దీనికి కూడా పూర్తిగా సహకరించేసేసి అప్పుడు 339 కోట్లతోటి ట్రీట్మెంట్ ప్లాంట్లు పెట్టినరు. కానీ గత ప్రభుత్వం, రాజశేఖర్ రెడ్డి గారి ప్రభుత్వం ఉన్నప్పుడు 100 కోట్లు పెట్టి ట్రీట్మెంట్ ప్లాంట్లు చేసిండ్రు. కానీ సివరేజ్ ట్రీట్మెంట్ ప్లాంట్ చేసిండ్రు. ఎఫ్లైన్ ట్రీట్మెంట్ ప్లాంట్లు మేము కోరితే పరిశ్రమలన్నా అదమాయించండి, కంపెనీ యజమానులనన్నా అదమాయించండి, పొల్యూషన్ కంట్రోల్ బోర్డు వాళ్ళనైనా కానీ ప్రభుత్వాలు అదమాయించండి. మీరు ఈ 3టిని చేయకపోతే మాత్రము ఆ నది అట్లనే ఉంటుంది. మీరు సివరేజ్ ట్రీట్మెంట్ ప్లాంట్లు పెట్టినా కానీ అవి ఎలాంటి పనిచేయని చెప్పడం జరిగింది. ఇప్పటికి కూడా ప్రతి మీటింగ్లో కూడా మా గొంతు అనేది కూడా వినిపిస్తూనే ఉన్నాం. కానీ ప్రభుత్వాలకు ఇప్పటికి కూడా అసలు దాన్ని పట్టించుకునే పరిస్థితి అనేది లేదు. అందరం కూడా ఇంకొక చిన్న విషయము, ముఖ్యంగా సార్ వాళ్ళు చెప్పిండ్రు కాబట్టి పంచాయతీరాజ్ వ్యవస్థ, నేను ఒక 13 నుంచి 18 వరకు నేను మాజీ సర్పంచ్, మేడ్చల్ జిల్లా, ఉమ్మడి రంగారెడ్డి జిల్లాలో కూడా జనరల్ సెక్రటరీ సర్పంచ్ సంఘానికి నేను ఉండడం జరిగింది. కానీ పంచాయతీరాజ్ వ్యవస్థను ఒకటేసారి తమరికి ఒక్కసారి విన్నవిస్తున్నాను. ఈ అసెంబ్లీలో ఇప్పటి ప్రభుత్వం వచ్చిన తర్వాత ఒక పంచాయతీరాజ్ వ్యవస్థను, ఒక చట్టాన్ని దాన్ని తీసేసి కొత్త చట్టం తీసుకొని రావడానికి వీళ్ళకు హక్కు ఏమైనా ఉన్నదా అనేది తమరి ద్వారా నేను ఒకటి అడుగుతున్నాను. కానీ దాన్ని ఇక్కడ ఇచ్చేసేసి ఇది కేంద్ర ప్రభుత్వానికి, రాష్ట్ర ప్రభుత్వానికి సంబంధాలు ఉండి చేయాలన్నా కొత్త పంచాయతీరాజ్ చట్టము, లేకపోతే వీళ్ళ ఇష్టానుసారంగా సర్పంచులను వాడుకోవడానికి ఇలాంటిది భ్రష్టు పట్టించింది. ఈరోజు వాస్తవానికి తెలంగాణ వచ్చేసేసిన తర్వాత మేము ఏదో బాగైతుందని అనుకున్నాం. అంటే నేను నా సర్పంచ్గా నేను నా ఆవేదన అది నేను గతంలో చేసిన కాబట్టి పంచాయతీరాజ్ చట్టాన్ని దాన్ని కొత్త పంచాయతీరాజ్ చట్టం చేసి సర్పంచులు నానా ఇబ్బందులు పెట్టేసేసి గ్రామాలల్లో ఎలాంటిది లేదు కాబట్టి దాన్ని ఏమన్నా ఇప్పుడు మీరు చెప్పినారు పిటిషన్ వేసుకోవడానికి కూడా ఫస్ట్ నేనే ఉంటాను. నేను ఇది పిటిషన్ వేయడానికి మేము డబ్బు స్తోమత లేదు కానీ ధైర్యం ఉన్నది, దాన్ని పోరాడే సత్తా అనేది మాకు ఉన్నది కాబట్టి ఉద్యమ స్ఫూర్తితోటి జీవించే హక్కు కోసం అనేది మేము పోరాడతామని చెప్పేసి తమకు విన్నవిస్తూ ముగిస్తున్నాను.
Translation a little bit. So basically, it has become impossible for the people living in the most polluted area downstream of Musi, because they have lost their third generation rights, right to clean air, clean water, clean surroundings. And the biggest tragedy is because when the 73rd and 74th amendments were enacted, the concept of sustainable development goals was not there. Today, it is a globally accepted thing. India is a signatory to the global pacts. Now, to organize development on a sustainable basis, we need to empower the Gram Panchayats in the real sense. Suddenly, overnight some industry comes up. There is no public hearing. People are simply suppressed. Everybody is purchased, local leaders, and everybody supports the industry. And what happens? We have a very big group which has come from Chittanur. Sir, another point, last point. We have a respected editor of a very famous request Professor Sri Ramchandra Murthy garu, please, ఒక్క నిమిషం కలిసిపోండి. ఓకే సార్, తర్వాత ప్లీజ్ కూర్చోండి అన్న. Due respects to, he is an activist editor, sir, always with the people. And another point is, yes, we really sincerely thank you, sir, for suggesting, yes, we need to knock the doors of court. Compulsory, we have to go to the court because it is our right to development. We can't compromise on the future of the coming generations in the villages. That point is very well taken, and definitely we have a lot of activists here. But the point is, in the days to come, what I feel as a social scientist, because I always considered society as my lab, I feel that we have filed more than 100 cases. We won about 90, and believe me, sir, we got 40 orders from the Supreme Court. But our Chief Secretary thinks he is above the law. There is no compliance. 293 pending cases, contempt cases against the Chief Secretary. Nothing happens. Now, the biggest question is, who is committing the contempt of court? Is not the Supreme Court party to it? They give a judgment and they don't bother to ensure its compliance. Why can't they create a mechanism and ensure it? So these are all major issues. Some other day, we request you to please come again. We'll have a much larger debate on this with more Gram Panchayats, Sarpanches, and now I request Sirish to please take over.
So, talking about environmental issues, we have a small gift that we want to offer to you, sir. There is a book written by Dr. K. Tulsi Reddy, Dr. Sai Bhaskar Reddy, and Uma Maheshwar Reddy. The title of the book is Tulsi Rao. Sorry, it's a small correction. Dr. K. Tulsi Rao, Dr. K. Sai Bhaskar Reddy, and Mr. Uma Maheshwar Reddy. So the title of the book is Eastern Ghats: The Outlook. So I request Srimati Leela Lakshman Reddy to come onto the dais so that she can gift these books to our eminent speakers here. Finally, sir, this is autobiography of a very veteran Congress leader, Shri V.B. Rajagaru. So I request Professor Reddy to give these autobiographies to our guests. I invite Mr. Arvind Reddy Garu onto the dais so that he is a very key member of S.Jaipal Reddy Memorial Foundation. You may please ask a question.
Yeah, what about that question?
So I'll read out this short letter, sir. It says, "Respected sir, Namaste. Even though there is fraud, still it is there. Bigger common families, no such worst election schemes. People before 2000 are much more happier than today. What is the main reason?" This is from Lion M. Ramanujacharyulu, past ex-district governor and national best teacher awardee. So I would interpret that even though there is fraud, still it is there. So bigger common families, no such worst election schemes. People before 2000 are much more happier. మీరు తెలుగులో చెప్తారా? మీరు ఏం అడగదలుచుకున్నారు? సార్ yes, I got it. So Mr. Ramanujacharyalu wants to ask that prior to 2000, year 2000, people were happy even though there are not many big schemes. But now there are many schemes, but people are not happy. Is that the question?
Correct. Worst schemes, that too.
Okay. So you are much concerned about the quality of schemes as on today.
Okay.
Oh, this is an allusion to the freebies that are being given away by.
I think I can answer that question in one sentence. Before 2000, you had Congress governments. After 2000, you don't. See, this is the whole basic problem.
So that's a very witty question, witty answer. Anybody wants to ask any more questions, please? Yes, please.
Which we have been beaming in this COVID time also. Purushotham Reddy is my guru and Subharavar Gurutulyalu. We have gone for even 7.5 hours live. It's when the ruling party almost lost GHMC and then the other. A small this thing here, the Kanjivarapu Sari story, I wanted to put it in a different way. We have Srimati Leela Lakshmareddy, who has been doing a very good job, though she comes from that Kanjivaram this thing. That is one thing. So she's been an inspiration for many. And the other aspect which I wanted to put it across, because S.Jaipal Reddy are Memorial Foundation through. When I was in Deccan Post, I give credit to my then editor Sridhar Boka. He's also one of the finest advocates we have. I had an opportunity to interview S.Jaipal Reddy garu. I hope Arvindan now not. I interviewed him when he was petroleum minister. After that interview, when he made some candid observations, he was shifted out of that portfolio. The next day when I called him, he was trying to reminisce and he was trying to put so many things into my mind. This I just wanted to convey because I never had an opportunity how forthright he was. And he's clearly said, natural resources belong to every citizen. Come whatever may, I will try to speak whatever you want. And we made it a point to get that printed in the very, we carried headlines in our Deccan Post paper. So these two things I thought I'll just relate it. So that the entire panchayat, what you are trying to say here, they bought an amendment through assembly and they are not allowing these elected panchayat, sarpanches, MPTCs, ZPTCs function in a free, in a transparent and accountable way. They are not allowing them until and unless you heed to the ruling party which is in power. This entire exercise of Rajiv Gandhi ji may become null and void. So, do you think in these circumstances, going to High Court with amendments in the Assembly will have any effect on this?
First, I'd like to say that I think Jaipal's highest moment was when he allowed himself to be thrown out of the petroleum ministry on a matter of principle. He was my successor as Minister of Petroleum, not my immediate successor. I had been minister and he came in then. And I really think he was a man of principle Well, there's nothing you can do about it. Our democracy rests on three principles: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And if they don't remain apart one from the other, then there are going to be problems. But when you have an existing law, then I think it is legitimate to raise this before the judiciary. Now, if the judiciary does not act, then I'm afraid democracy has come to an end. You can't have Panchayati Raj functioning and the Supreme Court of India not functioning. The excuse given is that we don't have enough judges, that we have too many cases and too little time to handle it. But this is for them to sort out. But the fact is that ever since the Constitution was promulgated, there has been an attempt by the centre, by the executive, to somehow interfere in both the legislature's business and in the judiciary's business. But it has never been as bad as it is now. And in these circumstances, I can only weep for democracy. But I don't think the answer lies in shooting dead the Supreme Court justice. No, that is not the way. We have to elect the right people. And if you feel you have elected the wrong people, there's an opportunity going to come to you in a year or two to elect the right people. And in my personal view, the right people are those whose party begins with the C. That's it.
Thank you, sir. What began as a lecture session had turned really interactive. Several questions were discussed today. So it's time that we thank our expert speakers, Shri Shankar Aiyar Garu. Thank you for all the information that you have shared with us. And Mr. Mohan Guruswamy Garu for two reasons. One is for all the empirical and academical knowledge is shared with us, and also providing this facility to conduct this interactive session. Dr. Reddy has always been a pillar of strength to S.Jaipal Memorial Foundation. He was always there when these programs were conducted. During the successive waves of Corona, these programs where talk shows were conducted over webinar, and he was a regular participant, and he is continuing his support to the foundation still. And I also thank ladies and gentlemen who have come here despite the hot sun, and who have made this program a grand success. And I know that there are many people who have joined us on the YouTube live stream. And I thank you all for gluing to your devices and listening to all these conversations with rapt attention. And I should also thank the press people who have come here to take a comprehensive coverage of the program. I'm sure there will be good reports of this program tomorrow. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time that we conclude this session, this lecture session on democracy and decentralization. Sir, they want to have a personal conversation with you for some time. All these sarpanchas who have come with their... Yeah. Okay. So can we do it then? Yeah. Okay, I'll leave the forum open. Here is the mic, and anybody wants to share your opinions and viewpoints over this subject, you are welcome.
Sir, I have one question, sir. Sir, nowadays contesting elections has become very costly affair, sir.
Assembly has been reduced Chief Minister's whim and wish. This is extraordinary, and I think the nation must take note of it. The media must take note of it. Lot of things are happening at the national level for you to take note of what's happening in Telangana. The two MLAs who are disqualified from membership or Mr. Komatreddy Venkat Reddy, a former minister, a four-term MLA, another Mr. Sampath Kumar, a scheduled caste MLA from my own district, Mahbubnagar. They are both dynamic legislators. They're active in the house and outside. So how can assembly do these things? I want the media and the nation and the entire set of political observers to take note of these things. I condemn this action of Telangana Legislative Assembly in strong terms in this country.